I never imagined that moment would completely alter my life, leading me down an unexpected path I could never have foreseen. My name is Amelia, and I'm 24 years old. After graduating from college, I returned home to live with my parents in a small coastal town. This place feels like home, where everything is familiar: the trees, the blades of grass, and the soothing sound of the waves in the distance. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can continue bringing you more fascinating true stories like this one. And don't forget to watch this video till the end, and like the video because this story is going to be incredibly interesting. Please hit the like button to show your support. At an age when I should be focused on starting my career and moving into adulthood, I find myself avoiding it. Perhaps a part of me fears that adulthood will steal away the peaceful days I'm currently enjoying. My life right now is simple and worry-free. Every morning, I wake up to the smell of freshly baked goods from my mom's kitchen. My dad enjoys his morning coffee on the porch, reading his books. As for me, I love sitting by the window, gazing out at the endless sea and feeling the warmth of the sun on my skin. It all felt like a perfect still moment, as if time itself had paused. But deep inside, I had a sense of unease. Sometimes I wondered whether this peace would last or if it was just the calm before a storm. My family is full of life, open-minded, talkative, and always laughing together. Family gatherings are filled with joy and endless conversations. But my younger brother, Max, who is 6 years younger than me, seems like he belongs to a different world. Max is quiet, distant, and often seems cold. I remember when he was younger. He was cheerful and always smiling, full of innocence like the morning sun. We were very close, spending afternoons running around the yard, building sandcastles, or whispering secrets. Those memories were ones I cherished, and Max's smile at the time was a comfort to me. However, as Max grew older, he changed. He became more withdrawn, shutting himself off from everyone. He stopped engaging in family activities like parties or vacations. Instead, he would often sit in a corner, staring into space or glued to his phone. I often saw our mom try to get him involved in family conversations, but she only received short or indifferent answers. Dad would say, "He just needs time to find himself," but I couldn't help wondering what had caused this change in Max. Over time, the gap between Max and me grew wider. We spoke less often, exchanging only short sentences when we crossed paths in the kitchen or living room. There were moments when I wanted to break the silence, to reconnect with the brother I once knew, but I hesitated, unsure if I had the right to push through the wall he had built around himself. Then the signs became impossible to ignore. At every family meal, while the rest of us gathered and laughed, Max's chair often remained empty. Initially, our mom would call up the stairs gently, "Max, come down for dinner." But she was only met with silence or a brief, "I'm not hungry." Our mom would sigh and Dad would shake his head, saying, "Leave him alone, he'll come down when he's ready." But I couldn't ignore him. One evening when dinner was ready and our mom called for him again, I decided to go up to Max's room and call him down. I climbed the familiar stairs, and when I reached his door, I could hear the sound of a game playing inside. This wasn't unusual. Max often played games alone, escaping into a world of his own where no one would disturb or judge him. The door was closed, as always, and Max had a habit of locking it, so we had to knock and wait for him to open it. But this time, the door wasn't locked. I wasn't sure if Max had forgotten or left it unlocked intentionally, but I didn't think twice. I decided to sneak in and tease him, as we used to when we were younger. I gently pushed the door open, and to my surprise, it creaked open silently. But what I saw inside left me speechless. Max was sitting in front of his computer, but he wasn't playing a game. He was watching something, and the images on the screen caused my heart to tighten. It was an adult video, and what struck me most was the sight of Max. His face was flushed, and his eyes were fixed on the screen. He was only wearing his underwear. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to turn away immediately, but my body seemed frozen in place. I felt a mix of shock, embarrassment, and more than anything, sadness. Why had my once innocent, bright little brother turned to this for release? Max didn't notice me standing there. I remained frozen at the door, my hand still gripping the handle. My eyes were glued to the image of him on the screen, but I tried to control the overwhelming emotions swirling inside me. My hand trembled as I slowly closed the door, careful not to make a sound. I didn't want Max to know I had seen what I shouldn't have. Once the door was closed, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. My heart was racing, but I stood still for a few seconds to regain composure. Then I knocked lightly on the door as though I'd only just arrived. "Max, come down to dinner," I said, keeping my voice casual. After a long pause, I heard his voice reply, "Yes, I'll be down in a minute." When Max opened the door, he stood there, his face still cold and distant. But I knew better now. I had seen what he was doing before I knocked. A sense of suffocation filled me, but I didn't show it. I nodded and turned away, leaving him in his room, the secret world I knew he had built for himself. I sat down at the dinner table, my mind racing. Mom and Dad were having their usual conversation, but I couldn't focus. Every word seemed to come from a distance, far away. A part of me wanted to tell them what had happened, but I couldn't. How could I explain what I had seen? It was something too difficult to talk about, a line I felt I shouldn't have crossed. That night, Max came down later than usual. His face was neutral, and he didn't make eye contact with anyone, answering my mom's questions with short, distant replies. I knew why he couldn't look at me. I avoided his gaze too, but deep inside, my heart was burning. What I had witnessed, what I knew, kept replaying in my mind over and over again. The days that followed were strange. Every time I saw Max, my chest tightened and my face would flush, though I didn't understand why. It was as if I was gradually learning more about him, more than I ever wanted to know, and it was changing the way I saw him, in a way that felt uncomfortable and unsettling. From then on, I began paying more attention to Max, not because I was curious, but because I couldn't stop thinking about what he was going through. He was no longer the carefree little brother I had known. Now he was distant and quiet, as if living in a world he had built to escape reality. Max spent more and more time in his room, rarely participating in family events or conversations. He seemed to have shut himself off from everything and everyone. There were times I wanted to talk to him directly to understand what was going on, but each time I hesitated. The fear of things changing permanently, of breaking whatever fragile connection we still had, held me back. I realized that the bond between Max and me had shifted, and it was no longer as simple as before. The distance between us grew, filled with things unsaid, with secrets and confusion. Then one day, my parents went out and wouldn't be back for 2 days. The house was quieter than usual, and I didn't see Max at all that day, not even when I prepared lunch. I tried to tell myself he was just lost in his own world, but a nagging feeling in my chest wouldn't let me ignore the worry. The memory of what I had seen last time haunted me, making me uneasy. That evening, after finishing dinner preparations, I decided to go upstairs and call Max down. I walked up the stairs, holding a tray of food in my hands. A strange sense of nervous anticipation hung in the air, as if something unpredictable was about to happen. As I approached Max's door, the familiar sounds of the game echoed through the room, the sounds of guns, background music, and the noise of a game. But this time I understood that the noise wasn't as innocent as I had once thought. It was a cover-up, a distraction from something deeper. I stood outside his door, trying to calm my racing heart. My hand rested on the doorknob and I twisted it, wondering if Max had locked the door. To my surprise, the door was unlocked. The wave of mixed emotions, curiosity and fear rushed through me. I gently pushed the door open just enough to peek inside, trying not to make a sound. What I saw this time was completely different from before. As soon as the door cracked open, I froze. Max wasn't sitting at the computer as I had expected. Instead, he was standing right by the door, almost as if he had been waiting for me. The light from the computer screen illuminated a dark corner of the room, and on the screen it was no longer a game. It was the same adult content, playing non-stop. Max was standing there wearing nothing but shorts, his upper body exposed. His eyes didn't show panic or fear like last time. Instead, he was oddly calm, staring directly at me. There was no shame in his expression. It was as if he had been expecting this, as if he was prepared for me to see it. "Do you want to come in?" Max asked, his voice low and even, without hesitation. Those words caught me off guard. I felt the tray of food slip from my hands. It hit the floor with a loud crash, spilling the contents everywhere. But Max didn't react. He just stared at me, his eyes searching for my response. I wanted to speak, to say something, but my throat was tight. My heart pounded in my chest, not out of fear, but from the overwhelming chaos of emotions inside me. Before I could move or say anything, Max stepped forward, his hand reaching out to grab my wrist, cold and firm. He pulled me into the room and closed the door behind him. The room felt suffocating, completely different from the one I remembered. It was messy, clothes and soda cans scattered everywhere. The images on the computer continued to play, and it was hard to believe this was the world Max had fallen into. "Max, turn off the computer," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my fear and unease were impossible to hide. Max didn't respond immediately. Instead, he smiled. It was a smile I had never seen before, one that made me feel uneasy. It was a strange smile, almost like he was challenging me, testing me. It sent a chill through my body. Then, slowly, Max walked over to the computer and turned it off. The room became eerily silent, except for the soft sound of our breathing. I couldn't stop watching him. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion, worry, and something I couldn't name. Everything in the room, the clutter, the computer, the dark atmosphere, made it hard to believe this was my little brother. The Max I once knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Max suddenly rushed forward and wrapped his arms around me tightly. The suddenness of it shocked me, and I couldn't react. His face buried into my shoulder, and his voice came out in a strained whisper. "I saw you," he said. "I couldn't take it anymore." Those words hit me like a bolt. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. My heart raced, but I tried to stay calm. I placed my hands on his shoulders, trying to push him away gently. "Max, calm down. You can't do this," I said, my voice shaking but firm. But Max didn't listen. He held me tighter, his body trembling as if he were at war with himself. "No, sister," he cried, "I can't stop." His voice was desperate, filled with an emotion I couldn't comprehend. I started to panic. "Max, this isn't right," I said louder, trying to shake him off, my voice firm with authority. But Max didn't loosen his grip. I felt suffocated, helpless. Max was no longer the brother I once knew. It was as if he had lost himself in something that no longer made sense. Finally, I shouted, "Max, stop! Right now!" My voice echoed through the small room like thunder, breaking the suffocating atmosphere. He froze, his body stiffened, and he slowly let go of me. Max stepped back, looking at me with confusion in his eyes. I could see the internal conflict in him, mixed with fear, as he realized what he had done. I took a deep breath to steady myself, though my body was still shaking from what had just happened. "Max, sit down," I said, trying to keep my voice calm but stern. "We need to talk." Max hesitated, still avoiding my gaze, but after a moment he finally sat on the edge of the bed. I sat across from him, trying to control my breathing and emotions. Max now looked like a child who had just made a big mistake, and I couldn't help but feel heartbroken for him. I looked at Max, feeling both heartbreak and concern. "Max, why are you like this?" I asked softly but firmly. "What's going on? I need you to tell me the truth." Max lowered his head, sitting in silence for what felt like an eternity, as if he were trying to sort through the mess in his mind. After a long pause, he began to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "I had no friends in school," Max admitted, his hands fidgeting nervously in his lap. "No one wanted to be around me, no one talked to me. At first I thought it was just that I didn't fit in, but as time passed, it got worse. It was like they couldn't see me. I felt invisible. I couldn't stand it anymore." Max paused again, taking a shaky breath. His voice trembled as he continued. "One day, I was at home, just lying on my bed, scrolling through Facebook. I wasn't looking for anything, but then I came across a link. I clicked on it without thinking. I don't know why, but I was curious." His hands were clenched tightly now, his shoulders shaking. It was clear how difficult this was for him, but I stayed quiet, letting him continue. "From that moment, everything changed," he said. "At first, it was just curiosity, but then I couldn't stop. I just kept going back to it. I withdrew from everything, locked myself in my room, and let myself get lost in it. It felt like I couldn't stop even if I wanted to." My heart ached as I listened to him. Max, my little brother, the one I had known to be carefree and full of life, was now trapped in a world he couldn't escape from. "Max," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady, "this isn't healthy. You can't keep going down this path. It's only going to pull you further away from everything." He looked up at me, his eyes red and full of tears. "But I don't know what to do," he said, his voice breaking. "I feel like I'm failing. I'm afraid people will laugh at me, and I'm scared you'll hate me." The pain in his voice made my heart tighten. I reached over and took his hand in mine, squeezing it gently. "You're not a failure, Max," I reassured him. "You're just lost right now, but I'm here. You don't have to go through this alone. We'll figure it out together." Max's body shook as he bowed his head, the tears now freely flowing down his cheeks. "I'm so sorry, sis," he whispered. "I didn't mean to make you worry. I never wanted to hurt you." I wiped away his tears, my heart breaking for him. "It's okay, Max. What matters now is that you've realized this isn't the way to live, and I believe you can change. I'll be here to help you." From that moment on, I knew I couldn't just walk away from Max. The image of him sitting there so vulnerable and full of regret made me realize he needed someone who wouldn't judge him, someone who could guide him back to the light. I made a promise to myself that I would be that person. I started paying closer attention to him, checking on him whenever I could. If Max stayed in his room for too long, I would find small reasons to call him out. Sometimes I would ask him random questions about dinner or ask for help with something around the house, anything to make him leave the isolation of his room. At first, Max seemed uncomfortable with the attention. He responded with short answers, sometimes with a deep sigh, but I didn't give up. I knew it would take time, but I had to be patient. Slowly, I started to see small changes. Max began to smile more, and those smiles, though hesitant at first, eventually became genuine and warm. One evening, as the whole family sat down for dinner, Max surprised us all. He told a funny story from school. His voice was a little shaky at first, but as he saw everyone listening, engaged and smiling, he started to open up more. It was the first time in a long while that Max truly participated in a family conversation. Our parents lit up with pride. "Max, that was such a funny story," my mom said, smiling warmly. "You tell it so well. Next time, tell me more." Dad patted him on the shoulder and encouraged him. "That's right. Keep it up, son. You're doing great." Those words, those simple words of encouragement meant the world to Max. Slowly, he started to change. He no longer retreated to his room for hours. Instead, he would help Mom in the kitchen or work with Dad on the garden outside. I watched these changes with a mixture of joy and relief. The brother I had once lost, the quiet and distant Max, was beginning to come back to us, and I realized that though my efforts may have seemed small, they were making a difference. Little by little, I was helping him find his way out of the darkness. I couldn't change everything for him, but I could be there for him. I could make sure he knew that he wasn't alone, no matter how tough things got. Whenever I saw Max struggling with his studies or feeling overwhelmed, I would be there to listen and help. I did everything I could to create an environment where he could feel safe and loved. Mom noticed the changes too. She couldn't hide her happiness when she saw Max more confident and engaged. "He's really growing up," she said one day as we cleaned the kitchen together. I smiled at her, keeping my thoughts to myself. I didn't tell her what Max had gone through. I didn't need to. I knew the changes were happening because of his own efforts and because we were all supporting him. As for me, I felt happier every day when I saw Max start to regain the spark in his eyes. Though we still had moments of quiet contemplation, I knew that was normal. What mattered was that I had helped him find his way back. This journey wasn't over, but I had faith that with the care and love of our family, Max would continue to grow and heal. No matter what happened, I would always be there for him, as his sister, his ally, and his companion. Max's life after the dark days was finally finding peace. He had gradually opened up again, becoming more social, reconnecting with his family, and rediscovering his smile. He had found his way back to us, and I was relieved to see him happier. Seeing Max change reminded me of an important lesson. Sometimes our loved ones may fall into darkness, into places they can't escape from on their own. We can't ignore the signs, withdrawal, isolation, unusual behavior, because they are silent cries for help. What they need is not judgment or pressure, but understanding and support. Max's story serves as a powerful reminder that negative influences, especially loneliness, can deeply affect someone. A single mistake, a moment of curiosity, can lead a young person down a dangerous path. But with love and care, they don't have to walk that path alone. To those reading this story, I want to share the lesson I've learned. Pay attention to your loved ones. Don't take small changes in their behavior for granted. If you notice something, don't be afraid to ask. True care and concern can change someone's life. Let them know you're there, ready to listen and support them. Remember, we all have moments of weakness, but with the right care, we can all come back stronger. No one should ever feel alone in their darkest times. Sometimes even the smallest act of care can make all the difference, and that's the power of love. Our story ends here. If you found it meaningful, please like and subscribe to our channel for more content. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you